to it. Alrighty, welcome back to the Solomon Sports Podcast. That was Flamon.
Dude, that song's tight, bro.
By Chris Noel. If you haven't heard that yet, shame on you. If you haven't played it on your podcast yet before now, shame on you.
Shame on you.
For anybody out there. But anyway, so make sure you go check that out. It's available everywhere. And buy it. Support them. Buy the song. And yeah, so this past week or two.
Can we put a disclaimer first?
Yeah, disclaimer, go ahead.
Okay, so the topic is going to be dealing with racism. Please bear in mind that this is a conversation between two white guys, and we are not trying to be insensitive. If at anything, we're trying to share our heart, where we are, what we've gone through, and kind of what's going on with us now. And so, please don't hate on us, but we're definitely willing to take any kind of constructive criticism, any opinions or thoughts that you guys might have, because we're willing to grow, and we are open to that. I think that we've both come from different places on this, I guess you could say, scale of racism, but we sort of felt like that this was something that was meaningful to us both, and having someone on the show of any kind of ethnicity other than our two lily white faces, I sort of feel like would even kind of be a slap in the face, because really what we're doing is we're just sharing who we are right now and what we're doing. Again, we welcome your comments and any feedback, but please just bear in mind that it's a sensitive thing, and we're willing to go there. So we're willing to, again, open up ourselves to this and share with you guys our hearts. So
yeah. So what made me think of this was two reasons. One was it got brought up on the Track Stars call about Liam Neeson. Did you hear about that?
no.
Liam Neeson, he's the guy that did the Taken movies. He's got a new movie out. I think it's called Widow. He's getting revenge in the movie. I hadn't heard the whole entire thing, but I've heard it broke down several times. Essentially, they asked him, "Was there ever a time that you wanted revenge?" And he said, "Yeah, there was a time where I think it was his daughter was almost raped. There was an attempt rape by somebody, and I guess it was a black individual." And he said, at that point in time, I just wanted to go out and find any black beat and just whatever, get paid back for my daughter. And but he said he's had a change of heart since then. His mindset's changed, this, that, and the other. And so it had me thinking, I've had a history with kind of similar, not similar, but in my own way of having feelings like that, not necessarily like that, but bad negative feelings towards people because of race. And so that is like History Month. I feel like it's only appropriate to talk about, at least our personal experiences with racism, as obviously in our country we've had issues in the past. But
Past.
Current day. True. So so for me personally, like growing up, I had family members who would always. Honestly, it started with I would say the very earliest for me that I experienced any form of racism that I remember was I was in a restaurant, I was in the bathroom, using the bathroom in a stall. There was a few kids that came in, there were three young black kids, and they kept peeking into the door like the crack. They were like, "Who's in there? Who's in there?" They were beating on the door, and finally they came out. And I was scared. There were three kids in there. And I mean, the race thing didn't bother me. I wasn't scared because they were black. I was just scared because three kids were beating on the door.
Right.
And so I washed my hands, and one of the kids were like, "You prejudiced, ain't you?" I didn't even know what that meant.
Right.
I was like, "No, I ain't prejudiced." They were like, "You don't even know what that means, do you?" I said, "Yeah, it's you." And the kid just punched me in the mouth.
Wow.
And then the other kid shoved me. So I ran out of the bathroom. And honestly, I didn't think it was anything racial. I didn't know. I had no idea what just happened.
Right.
I just know a kid punched me in the face and another kid shoved me, and that was it. That's all I knew. And but I really didn't have any other incidences like that at all. I know as I got older, there were some of my family members, and my grandfather. He was kind of openly racist. I mean, he didn't want anybody who was black in his house. He would say things like, "There are some good ones," referring to black people. He said, "There are some good ones out there," language like that. And as a young kid, it wasn't super explicit still. It just, that stuff didn't click in my head. And I think, growing up as a white kid around that type of environment, that takes effect long term.
Yeah, that
And
ingrained racism.
it really does. And that's that. It's kind of like I said, the way it's built in, it was being built into me. But I grew up. I had black friends. I had Hispanic friends, white friends. Like I had friends, at least those three backgrounds or ethnicities. So, I didn't really have any issues. And as I got older, got into high school. In middle school, there wasn't a huge divide between groups. But when I got to high school, man, like you had so many different cliques of people,
Right.
so many. And like when I was in, by the time I got from middle school to high school, I was very much in a more of an urban mindset. Like I loved rap, I had black friends that I hung around, and so I had that mindset. And then I was kind of shunned. I was a white kid in, at least in that section of the South, who dressed like I saw people dress on BET, the stuff that I watched, the people that I adored or whatever.
You were an Oreo.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but throughout high school, I was shunned. I was like, "Why are you wearing them baggy clothes?" And I only had a couple friends who went from middle school to high school who were black, and so they were cool with me. But we had different classes. When you get to high school, you're not with the same kids. It expands, and so I wasn't with them all the time. I was around other new people, and so I was like, maybe I don't know, maybe I'm not supposed to be dressing like this, because I felt like people didn't want me to dress like that. I wouldn't be accepted for the way I dressed. And so I hung around with other family members, and they were listening to country. I was introduced into country music, to Southern rock, Confederate flags. Like it was a period of my life, probably the 10th grade, where I was around a lot of that. And so I started wearing cowboy boots, started wearing more fitted jeans, sleeveless shirts. I even had a cowboy hat that I would wear. So I completely switched it up, like a completely 180. And so, and the crowd that dressed like that were like, okay, I seemed to fit into that white crowd who were doing the same thing I was.
Right.
I started noticing jokes that they would tell. And there were racial jokes, like, why did the black person this, or just stuff like that. And at first, I was thinking, oh, these are just harmful jokes. I mean, they joke about your mama, they joke about each other, tell a joke about a black person. At that time, I didn't see anything about it. And then, like, the next year came, and people were introducing me into, like, pretty much straight racist stuff. Like racist songs that were calling, and please forgive the language. I'm recalling things that I heard, but like, I was introduced to the term jigaboo for the first time. I was introduced to these things and ideas and concept, and it started off as like it was just a joking matter, and then I was hearing a lot of stereotypes, and people were pointing out things, and I was just like, my mindset was changing as I was around that group of people. And so it got to the point where, like, I would hear people complaining about like white girls dating black guys.
Right.
And they were angry about it. So what did I do? Well, I started getting angry about it because they were. And it was a time of my life where I was becoming what I would call a racist. Whenever I would see a black person, I would automatically assume all sorts of things, unless they were wearing, churchy clothes.
Okay.
Unless they were like churchy clothes and had glasses, and and essentially looked the way I looked, or whatever. Like, they had to fit a stereotype
They
for me to.
look quote unquote white.
Exactly. And so, like Carlton from Fresh Prince of Bel Air,
Okay.
they weren't like that.
Right.
But it was weird though because I still love Fresh Prince of Bel Air. I was still listening to rap, but not as much. And so I felt like, well, I can't be a racist because I still, it's like, well, I got a black friend, I'm not racist.
Right.
But the stereotyping that I was doing was so strong, and I got to the point where I literally would, any new black person that I wasn't a friend with, I would automatically judge them and have a hatred for them.
Mm.
And that was the darkest point in my life at that moment in time. And I don't know if I don't think I've shared all that before, but the movie American History X is what turned the table for me.
Oh, really?
And if you haven't seen that movie, you need to watch it, whether you're black, white, Hispanic, no matter what you are.
Powerful.
You need to watch that movie. That completely, I watched that movie, and at the end of it, like, I sat stone cold for about 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Completely just blew me away. And it really started to kind of shift my mindset at that point. Thank God, like, because, now, and I don't think anybody would have ever guessed, any of this stuff. I ever felt any of these kind of ways, because, I'm so ingrained into the Christian hip hop culture, hip hop culture in general. And I'm at a point now where I'm more suspect of, I'm more suspect of white people with Confederate flags than I am any black person I ever see. And, which, I mean, that isn't, you shouldn't be suspect of anybody by the way they look. And so, for any reason. But it was really a dark time in my life, and, I'm just thankful that I was able to be brought out of that. And then I started, and I learned, coming out of that we should always try to see everything through the lens of other people, the way they see it. Because, even though I might not, in the earlier stages, like that one joke that I heard that I thought was, harmless, somebody else could have heard that joke and it really could have been offensive and hurtful for them.
Right.
And so I started to learn, like, and there's a lot of things that people just don't understand, and a lot of times people don't care, and then they just start getting mad about stuff. And I don't know, man, I just wanted to just share that. Like, I don't know. I mean, I know you've had a couple of stories you've shared with me,
right,
about stuff.
Well, I grew up in an area of Washington where all the white kids and all the black kids were about equally poor. And if anything, we were more racist toward the Asian kids, because more of the families in that area owned businesses, so those kids had the newer clothes, the nicest stuff. And so we just hated them because they had nice things. And it was easy to make fun of them, right? And I was an Oreo growing up. I wore my parachute pants and my sneakers the way that everybody was doing at the time that was predominantly African American. So, I was following Run DMC style and that sort of thing. And really dating myself, aren't I?
I don't know who that is.
You know who Run DMC is. Anyway.
DMX.
Yeah, anyway. So, when I moved from Washington to North Carolina, is when I started to really begin to realize what black on white racism, or white on black racism is. And that's when I first found out what an Oreo, in terms of a negative term, was, because that's what they were calling me, because I didn't look like a white kid. And I wouldn't say that I necessarily got to a low point like you were at, where I was more overtly exposed to racism.
Yeah, I wasn't outwardly racist. It was all inward.
Right. But you had a heavy exposure to it.
I did.
For me, it was more that subtle, ingrained kinds of stuff that we have a tendency to overlook. So, when you walk into a store and there's, a black guy on one side of the store, well, you instinctively, quote unquote, go to the other side of the store to avoid him. You're in an elevator and there's a black person in there, and as soon as the doors close, you start checking to make sure you still got your wallet. You know, those kinds of things, and they're subtle and they're small things that just sort of seep into your mindset because somewhere along the way somebody has taught you this, has filtered into your way of thinking that these are things that you need to do because you can't trust you know, this people group or whatever. And I didn't ever grow up that way. I mean, my mom was good friends with lots of folks of different ethnicities. In fact, I hung out, like I said, mostly with black kids. And so to me, I never thought that I was racist or that I was perpetuating racism until I hit college. And I had an instructor, white guy, who he's actually of the religious faith of Baha'i. I think I'm saying that right.
I've heard of that, but
Yeah, but anyway, he was actually, I assume he still is, part of the NAACP out of where he lived, and he was holding some overcoming racism classes, and I was like, okay, sure, whatever. And I eventually met a guy that would become my roommate later on down the road, and you know, I started to realize that there were all these little things that I was doing. And so by that, I was perpetuating racism. And you have to make a conscious decision to step away from those things, to be able to say, okay, I see, first off, I'm listening to you, you know. So when a black person tells you, hey, you guys do this, you need to listen. You need to give them credibility. You know, so hey, when I walk in, as you know, speaking for a black person, when I walk into a store, the clerk is eyeballing me the whole time that I'm in there, and he's not watching out for you. You know, so I guess actually, if you're a thief, that's a good time to steal stuff, is when there's black folks in the store.
right.
But anyway, sorry, side note.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, but to be able to say that, you know. That I experienced that or saw that, I didn't. So I would have easily dismissed it until I made a special effort to start looking for those things. To say, okay, well, I'm going to give this person credibility. Let me start looking around for that. And I think I've shared on the show before about how my roommate and I, we would go to a restaurant and, you know, they'd put the change from the bill in my hand, but for his bill, they'd set it on the counter, and then we would test it, and they did the same thing over again. And I mean, and those are those subtle racist things, but they're still racist and it's still being perpetrated.
Yeah.
So, what am I supposed to do about that? I'm supposed to call it out. I'm supposed to say, hey, look, you know, that ain't cool, man. It's kind of like when we were talking about the Gillette commercial.
Right.
When the guy's eyeballing the girl walking down the street. Whoa, wait a second.
Yeah.
That ain't cool, man. You know, let's not behave like that. Let's take it up a notch, you know?
Yeah, I think that's, you know, that's one of the questions that I've always had. Like, well, what can I do to stop, you know, what's my part, right? And because I'll be honest, I don't feel like just talking about it on a podcast helps. I mean, I don't know how many people that listen to the show who might even think there might be racist. I think most people that listen to it are pretty open-minded, and at least I hope so. I mean, but I do think, you know, I mean, there's a lot of things that take place even in the church, and for me personally, I think I've shared this before. Like, I'm not surprised when I see racism in the world. That doesn't surprise me one bit. I'm not surprised when I see the divorce in the world. I'm not surprised when I see abortion get passed as law. Like, none of that stuff surprises me. I get surprised when I see it in the church. And so, like, for me personally...
Yeah, I don't get surprised, because
I'm not
part of my story is that's where I experienced most of my racism.
I'm not surprised. That's where I would say it hurts me the most.
Yeah,
seeing
definitely.
it in the church, because, I mean, like, one of the things, and I know, Pat, there's a sermon series going on at Calvary Wallace, or I think Calvary in general, and my pastor over at the Bridge, you know, one of the things that he said in terms of that church, he said, you know, I want us to become more multicultural. There are some churches out there that are really multicultural. other churches, they say they want to be, but it's really okay. We want to be a white church that accepts black people, Hispanic people, and it's really like you have to. I think one way of overcoming racism is being willing to try to understand somebody else's culture, why they feel this way. It's not just a oh they just they must feel that way and just walk away and not care about it. But really, to honor somebody, you got to understand what offends them, why it offends them. You really got to understand them more than just okay, well that just offended him because he's black. He took it the wrong way.
Right.
Something like that. You got to understand why did he take it that way to begin with. Why would he have taken it that way if you feel like
And
whatever?
there's value to it.
Exactly. And so I feel like one of the things that we can do, period, and like I said earlier, is really trying to view life and things through other people's lens. Like if a woman gets offended about something, don't just say, "Oh, she's sensitive. She's a woman. She should just get over it." Like try to figure out why does she feel this way.
Mm-hmm.
When you see, a commercial about something like the Dove commercial a while ago, whenever the Dove, I think it was a Hispanic woman, a black woman, that like they kept showing like the use of the soap, and then it ended in a white woman. A lot of people were offended. A lot of people of Hispanic and black were offended on that commercial, and a lot of white people were like, "I didn't see any racism in that." Was like that's, but you don't see through other people's lens, and so immediately one thing that you can do, especially and this is more of me speaking on behalf, or from a white man's perspective, is we're like, oh, they just read too much into it. They need to just let it go. They're pushing so far. And I think they're just reaching now. Like they're probably not reaching. They probably really do feel that way. And I think it is a part of stereotyping or a form of racism when you just think people need to get over it. They just need to figure out how to live with it. And I feel like we need to learn how to look at everything through other people's lens before we pass any type of judgment on their feelings or whatever. I don't know, or don't pass any judgment on their feelings. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, with our daughter, from the very beginning, my wife and I had decided that we wanted to make sure that we raised her with as little to no biases toward any people group whatsoever. So, part of that was us taking a look introspectively at ourselves to say, well, what things are we doing that maybe she's going to just instinctively pick up on? And, so we did the whole, she had like one of every color baby doll, and she played with them universally. I'm reminded of a photograph from Gordon Parks, which, by the way, you can follow on Instagram. The New Yorker photo, I think, is the handle. And they're doing Gordon Parks photographs all this month, which are phenomenal. But he and so we're talking like back in the 40s or 50s when he did this one particular photograph of this little black girl who's grabbing out for a white baby over a black baby doll. And, it was all part of a study to say that instinctively we are training up everybody to think a specific way. So, this child who is I'm assuming around, black families, when it comes to a baby doll, thinks that there's more worth to the white baby doll. Where's this child getting this? And that a lot of that comes from school.
Yeah.
But, so we wanted to make sure that with our daughter that wasn't the case. And so, we try to expose her to all that. But now that she's obviously much older, she's seeing it. She's asking a lot more questions. Why is this happening? Why is this group doing this? Why is this group doing that? And we break down everything as well. So, I'm a very critical thinker anyway. So, unfortunately, she's exposed to that all the time. I would say for her benefit, but sometimes it can be tedious for her too, I guess. But the thing is that, so whether we're saying, okay, well, so why is this African American person behaving this way? Why are they saying this? Well, is there some validity to this? Could you see where this could be legit?
Right.
Okay, well, let's take a look at what may be contributing to this. So, one of my biggest pet peeves when it comes to racism is that um, you can't steer clear of the statistic that most crimes are committed by African Americans. And I'd make the caveat to say that most convicted
Right.
criminals
Right.
are African American.
Right.
So what happens is that you're watching the news in the morning, at night, middle of the day, whatever. And so what are you seeing? And we've done this. I've sat down with her and we've taken an entire week and I said, we're going to watch the news and we will count how many criminal activities have taken place and then what ethnicity they are. Now, this is not to say, oh, see, so black people are evil or something like that, but to say, what is that telling us? What is that subliminally feeding into our psyches? So if every time I turn on the news, I'm seeing crime, 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 and every face associated with that is African American, what am I now beginning to think?
Right.
I'm beginning to think that black people are evil. They're doing all these horrible things to us. Okay, wait a minute. So what could news media start to do? Frankly, do we need to know about all these criminal activities?
Right.
Probably not. Do we need to know who it is that's perpetrating these things? Probably not.
Well,
And
it's also a matter of how is it weighted? Like, how are they picking which people to news? Because they don't cover every news of every crime.
well, and
So,
even still, even if again, you're talking about the convicted criminals, so those that are caught. So statistically, they're still predominantly African American, and that's you can't get away from that. That is a fact. I'm not saying that they do commit most of the crimes. I'm just saying that they are the ones that are most often
convicted.
convicted.
Convicted. Okay. Okay. Gotcha.
So to say that regardless, the news can only really report on that. If they say, well, somebody did this thing, but we don't know who it is, you've got no face to associate with it. So when we're looking at the convicted criminals, we're seeing a face now. And so unfortunately, that is more often than not an African American face. And so that's feeding the racists. Because now that's giving them more of a platform to say, see what all them people are doing? This is what's wrong with our country. News media, stop.
Right.
You're not helping. I mean, the thing is that frankly, it really doesn't matter what ethnicity, what do they look like. It does not matter. Let's go ahead and start changing this dialogue and avoiding these things so that way we can help change the perspective. So now what happens to the police officer that goes out there on the street at night? Instantly, and it doesn't matter whether you're an African American or a white police officer, they both get scared in certain neighborhoods.
Right. Right.
And part of that is because of some of those stereotypes that are fed into them. And so, okay, some of it's legit, don't get me wrong, some of it's legit. But some of it then spills over because now all of a sudden any black person in any car is now a suspect all the time.
Yeah, my cousin Isaiah, he's mixed, he's black and white. And he was going to speed limit and everything. And a cop pulls him over and says, "You look like you're lost."
Yeah.
What?
No, I'm found. I'm a Christian. Thanks, bro.
How do you look lost? He was driving down the street.
Yeah.
And he said, like, he wasn't going around in circles. He wasn't, like, trying to find a house in the neighborhood. And it was like, really? I mean, I don't know. Like, I hear so many crap stories like that. But, yeah, it gets fed into and stereotypes get fed into. And me personally, man, like, and everybody ain't got to be as extreme as I am. When I see bad drivers, when I see cars that have bad drivers in them, I try my best not to look at the driver.
Yeah.
I really don't. Because essentially what we're doing is we're trying to build up a stereotype. And unconsciously, that's exactly what you're doing. You're like, what kind of person is driving? So,
right.
And it's either going to feed into your stereotype or you're going to think, oh, I'm surprised.
Right.
Why am I surprised? Because I got a stereotype. And And you'll know because when you see the driver, if they fit the stereotype. I mean, this is for if you're white or black, any race.
Right.
You're essentially trying to feed into your stereotype is what you're doing.
See, I don't have that problem because I know everybody is a horrible driver except for me. So it's everybody but me.
Well, you said you don't like people in general. So.
Well, right. So it doesn't really matter.
But so I don't really know any calls to action for this. I mean, I will say this that I was in I don't know. I'm not saying my wife and I mean, we're not like proactively trying to teach our kids, about not being racist, nothing like that. But the other day, my oldest daughter, who's actually autistic, she was talking to my younger daughter, and she was trying to tell her about one of her teachers. Now, she's in the self-contained class. She has technically 4 adults in the room. You got
Right.
the teacher, assistant, 2 assistant teachers, and a student teacher.
Mm-hmm.
One of the assistant teachers is an African American woman.
Mm-hmm.
And so the whole time, Jaylee's trying to explain who this woman is,
Mm-hmm.
like which teacher it is. And it was like when she finally got fed up, she, at the end, was like, the brown one.
Mm-hmm.
But I think in most people's minds, you would immediately go to, well, the black one.
Right.
You got 3 white teachers, one black. And so that kind of excited me, like, she's...
That was the last thing on her list.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That wasn't the first thing that she thought to mention. And a lot of times, if it's a man or woman, you differentiate. And I'm not saying it's wrong to, if you got a black person and a white person in the room.
Right.
Like, there are major differences in the look of people.
Right.
I mean, so I'm not saying you're racist if you say...
The fat one or the skinny one.
Yeah, I'm not saying you're a prejudice to a certain type if you do refer to somebody because of their physical appearances.
Right.
And I think sometimes we can actually go in the reverse, and we do completely opposite. We're like, yeah, they had a red shirt, they have, dark hair.
Dude,
brown
was she black or
eyes.
was she white? Because there's only 2 of them, and I'll know which one is which.
I have been on the opposite side of that.
Yeah.
I really have. And I'll be honest, like, sometimes I feel like I'm still kind of on the opposite end because, like, if I get in the elevator, with an African American person, I'll be more likely to say good evening to them or good morning to them than like a white. Usually the white people. I'll be honest. A lot of the people I work with, they just look mean. I'm not even lying to you. I'm not like. I don't know what it is. I just and I can say
I don't know
hey.
if they're all working 3rd shift. I guess it makes sense.
I can say hey to them, and they just say nothing to me. Good morning. They just say nothing to me.
Yeah.
And but I try to make sure, like, I don't want anybody to think I'm racist.
Right.
And I don't know if it's because I used to be a racist,
Right.
and I want to make sure that they know I'm not one of these racist people. I don't want you to assume I am because I'm white and I'm in the South. So I'm trying to like fight against any thought that I might be. Some people told me I'm going way above and beyond. So I don't know, but it's just one of those things that's always in my head. Like if we're talking about something, like even on the Track Stars call, if we're talking about something that has anything to do with race, I try to make sure, and I know none of them think I'm racist. None of them, they know me well enough, but still in the back of my mind, I'm like, look, I want you to understand this is not the way I think for any racial reason, okay?
Right.
But anyway, I mean that's just my history with it. That's my past. I used to be a racist.
So
Speech.
I would encourage folks because I think that there's a takeaway from this, and it's not just us sharing our experience, even though I think that there's a lot of validity to that. But to be able to say, take a look at your surroundings. If your church is all white, then you're not getting any exposure to African American culture. If your Instagram is nothing but white people, then you're not getting any culture. If you're not, I hesitate to say that hey, you got to go out and find a black friend, okay? Because that's probably going to the other side of things.
Okay, if you're a parent and you get nervous because your child likes somebody of another race,
Yeah.
like question why you're nervous about that.
so question all those sorts of things in your life, and start to take a look at it. Am I perpetrating something? Is there something here that's a preconceived notion? Look, how often have we heard, hey, black people, they eat fried chicken and watermelon? Well, yeah, right, many do, and you know what? I know a lot of white folks that do too.
If you're in the
But
South, that's just what you do.
that's what we
That's
do.
what we do.
But so is it a stereotype? Is it racism? Well, what's the context? And I'm always trying to beat that into my daughter's noggin is, well, what is the context? Okay. Y- you know, if you at least start looking at these sorts of things in your own life and you start asking questions about it, then that's going to naturally lead you into a progression of saying, oh, I see something now. I'm willing to open my mind to what's being said, and question anything and everything that you see on the news. I'm not talking about fake news stuff. I'm just talking about, why is this being shown? Why is this like this? What is it that's encouraging people to do this or that? Why are people behaving this way? And I'm not saying why are black people behaving this way. Why are white people behaving this way? Why do they feel so angry about these sorts of things? What is it that's driving them to this ultra aggressive point that they feel like that they have to behave like this? What is it that drives them to this point? And then it's not so much to say, oh well, they're just racist and let's write them off. But then you start to begin to understand them, and then you start looking at, okay, well, if these are the driving forces that are encouraging racism, then what can we do to try to stop that so that way racists have less to work with? To me, if people were better drivers, then I wouldn't think I was the only great driver out there. There would be other people. Yeah, Jason, your driving scares me. There's just no two ways about it. But getting back to the learning of culture, so take a moment. Again, I'm a photographer, so I Gordon Parks is just he was a phenomenal photographer, especially for the time. But he did a lot of work that was based off of literature that was frankly edgy at the time, stuff that was dealing with racism and dealing with African American culture. And so, we're talking about stepping outside of the comfort zone to try to learn about a people group that maybe you're just not as familiar with. And isn't that okay? Isn't that kind of where we should be? So even if you're not like, okay, well, I'm going to start, talking to the black guy or the black girl at work now and try to be friends with them, okay, whatever. Maybe they're a jerk and you just don't want to anyway. That's okay, because whether you're white or black, we all come as jerks at some point, or, we have jerks in both races. But taking that moment to maybe try to read some literature from African American writers, and especially period stuff, so that way you can understand struggle. There's a book called Black Boy that I will admit I have not read, but in terms of a book that's on my list to read, it is very close to the top because it talks about growing up as a black boy in a certain time of history, and what this person was experiencing and how they saw themselves. And that's when you begin to listen, and that's when you begin to open your mind to say, oh, okay, I'm getting this now. I'm starting to understand why this person or that person is saying something. And the other thing to remember with all this is also that there's no one speaker for an entire or any group for that matter.
We're not speaking on behalf of all white people.
Yeah, and you can't say that, just because I read this book from an African American writer that speaks for all, all black folks out there. That is not the case. So I was kind of killing a little bit of time there, but Gordon Parks Foundation. Gordon Parks did a series of photographs based on a book by Ralph Ellison called Invisible Man. And this is actually next on my reading list. Right now I've got another theological book that I'm just about to finish, so this is next on my list. Because it's so profound, because it is so much of where someone that is black, how, I mean, truly being vulnerable and saying that this is how I've grown up, this is how I've seen myself, this is the identity that society has plugged into me, and this is how I feel about this. And Gordon Parks did a series of photographs based on that, and they're so deep, they're so profound, and frankly, his photographs are actually what encouraged me to say, well, what's this based off of? And then I see this book and I go, okay, well, let me check out the book, and I go, wow, this is deep. Yeah, I want to check this out. But being vulnerable enough to be able to say, okay, I'm willing to step outside of a comfort zone. Maybe it's just reading the book. Maybe it's just questioning what things are going on around you or what's in your own life. But I would definitely encourage you, you can't just, go to your coworker that's, black or Hispanic and say, hey, what's it like to be a black person? Talk to me. Nobody's going to do that.
Yeah, don't be ignorant about it. That's just ignorance.
Now don't get me wrong. There are some folks that you can probably do that with.
Yeah.
Omar is one of those guys that you could have a straight up conversation about racism, white on Hispanic, black on Hispanic, and
Hispanic on Hispanic.
Hispanic on Hispanic, and
he broke down a whole entire 30-minute conversation of him just telling us how different groups in Mexico and Honduras and Dominican Republic are all racist toward each other.
Yeah. So
I really wish we had him on the show,
but it's that sort of thing where once you start building a relationship, then you can start to get to the point where you can start asking some questions and saying, hey, I saw this on the news the other day, and it didn't make me feel good, and there's something up with this. Can you tell me a little bit more about this? How does that make you feel? And you know what? I'm willing to bet that they're going to be grateful that somebody that is interested in what they have to say and what they think.
Right.
And then you can begin to grow. And then you start telling all your white folks, start correcting your white folks. White folks correct white folks. When you see something wrong, do something about it. If you stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything, right? I mean, I don't, whether you're quoting Martin Luther King or any number of other people that have said something to the effect of, the worst thing that you can do is nothing.
Yeah, yeah.
So when there's something wrong, do something about it. Again, name somebody and somebody has said something to that effect. So
well, at least
if your quote there.
At least do what you can in the environment you're in.
Yeah, you don't have to go out and be a total activist about it, You don't have to go out and join Black Lives Matter or the NAACP, but look, go ahead and start correcting things. I'm not saying that the NAACP or Black Lives Matter are entirely right from their perspectives either, because I think we've shared issues. Again, that's why even politically we're kind of not really associated with anybody either, because I can't back anybody because they're all messed up. They all got some sort of screwed up agenda.
We're for kingdom. We're for kingdom.
Right, there you go. So, but begin that dialogue, begin asking yourselves those questions, and then start talking to your white friends about it and helping them to see what's really going on. So.
Yeah. Some would call it audible, and we can either play it before the third song, but I forgot our brother Shawn David Grant, his wife just had a child.
Oh yeah.
He did a spoken word piece called Dear Racist.
Okay.
A lot of great points that he made in there. He did this last year for something specific, I think, and so I just purchased it. Like I'd heard it before, just on YouTube, but it's actually available for purchase too. So I think we'll play that before the final song, because we still got to end out in the metal song. We
don't have to. We can save the metal song for next week.
Okay, well we'll do that then.
Yeah,
we'll end the show out with that. But yeah, just think about this thing and just ask internally, is there anything you need to, get corrected or pray about? And So yeah, so that's it for the show. I don't know. We hadn't been that heavy on something that that heavy in a while, so it was about time.
Yeah.
To all the patron supporters, Reed versus Sam Blackwell, shout out to y'all for supporting the show.
Thank you.
Genesis Pro Designs, GenesisProDesigns.com if you want to get some special artwork done, logo for your business, book, song, whatever it is, graphic design work, GenesisProDesigns.com. Shout out to him. And yeah, so we're going to end the show out this week with Sean David Grant, Dear Racist. Like I said, it is available on all platforms for purchase and for stream. And congratulations on him having the baby, which we completely forgot to mention at the beginning of the show. I didn't even think about it. But a lot of people don't even really know because they hadn't really announced it. Like neither him or his wife are on social media like that.
Yeah.
So they don't go up there
and
and
big of a deal.
they don't go up there and say every day, "Hey, I'm eating this for breakfast. I'm eating this for lunch. This is my favorite snack. Yeah, I just took it, whatever today." So anyway, congratulate them if you can.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll see y'all in a couple weeks. And always remember that Jesus loves you way more than we do.
I'm trying to love him more.
Cool.
No, it's pretty warm in here.
It is really warm.